Episode 226, Ironman 70.3 Pucon with Alan Dempsey. Welcome to the pursuit of the perfect race. I'm Coach Terry Wilson, and with each episode, I bring stories of athletes to you that share their experiences at races in order for you to learn how to have your perfect race. We will hear stories from athletes of all ages, abilities, and races of all distances. So regardless of where you fit in, there's something in it for you. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let the pursuit begin. Hey everybody, welcome back to the pursuit of the perfect race. Today I'm talking with Alan Dempsey about his recent race at Ironman 70.3 Pucon that took place on January 13th, 2019. The temperature on race day was 59 and ranged to 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Alan has been a pro for just over a year now, and I look forward to hearing about his race down in Chile. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. So what made you want to do this race, man?
So it's actually because my wife works in Chile sometimes.
Really?
And yeah, she does work down here. So, it just happened to be a work trip for her, and she knew it was going to be a work trip well in advance. So she said, "Hey, why don't we, while I'm down there, why don't you come down? I'll race and you can race." And she said she had a coworker who was racing as well. So yeah, that's basically why I did the race. Nice. And I'm glad I did too, because it was a wonderful race.
Man. So you just got your pro card just over a year ago. What's it like being a pro?
It's hard. I mean, it's basically the same as it was in bike racing. It's just a lot of getting your head kicked in every single race until someday, hopefully, you enter a race and you've figured it out and it goes well.
Wow. So you had a few good races last year and not so good of a race at Mont Tremblant last year. How has that been emotionally and mentally for you coming back?
It was hard. This race is funny because it wasn't supposed to be an important race to me. It was just supposed to be something I was going to do that was going to be fun. And, it ended up being the worst triathlon I've ever done. And so it kind of hit me pretty hard. Like it was a huge psychological blow because I'd worked so hard on so many different weaknesses that I had last year, notably the swim. And I ended up having my worst swim ever. I think I had the worst swim of anybody ever could possibly have in a 70.3. And, yeah, so it's been a tough one to swallow over the last couple of weeks since the race.
Wow. So how have you been dealing with this emotionally? You been okay?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of just, I mean, I don't know what to say. Like it took me a couple of days. So we went after the race. We had to go back to Conception where my wife works. And I was kind of stuck in this Holiday Inn because there's nothing there. It's like go walk around the mall or hang out in the hotel. It's not, unfortunately, it was not a place in Chile where there was a lot of things to do or see. So I spent 2 days basically just lying in a bed in a hotel room watching like videos on YouTube, just like, trying to deal with that kind of emotional roller coaster that I went through after the race. And, but I mean, now that I'm home, I feel a lot better. I'm back into training. My motivation, surprisingly, is super high right now. And I think that's because I know that I have, almost 4 months until my next race. And if I continue on the training progression at the very least that I've had for the last couple of months for the next 4 months, I think that I can put together a good race this year.
Nice.
And I'm hoping that Pucon was just a one-off, perfect storm of terrible events.
Wow. Well, hopefully we can dive into something that somebody can learn something from and not have your day.
Yeah, hopefully.
So I know you're talking about what's already next. So what do you have going on later this year?
So I start my race with Eagleman, which I've done before. And then I do Tremblant, which I've done before or tried to do before. And then my wife and I, we have an RV. We're doing a 4-week road trip to Boulder, Colorado. And we're going to race the 70.3 in Boulder. And then I'm going to come back after hopefully including a little bit of an altitude camp there in Boulder. I'll come back and race Traverse City, which is one of the new races that I think Ironman picked up. It's the newest one that at least has a pro field. And then I will do Barrelman, I think, Niagara Falls.
That's a great race, I hear.
Yeah, it's a really good race. It's a very cool race. Barrelman. And then there's one other race I'm thinking about doing, Augusta as well, which those races will be really close together. And then I'm going to do my first full as a pro at Arizona.
Wow. So you got a busy season.
I do, yeah. And then incorporated in there, there'll be probably 4 or 5 sprints and Olympics that I'll do, just like local races for fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
So do you have a background in any of the 3 sports that led you to be a pro triathlete?
Yeah, I was a cyclist for a long time. I was a bike racer for a good while. I actually started out as a bike racer when I was 19, but I couldn't afford it. So I quit and became a runner, and I ran a bunch of marathons and I ran 1 marathon and a bunch of half marathons. And then I did get into triathlon for long enough to do an Ironman at any rate. And then from there, I started racing on the track on the velodrome, where I realized that I was terrible at long distance events and I was more of a sprinter. So I was really good at that on the track. And then I went outside and raced on the road, and I did all right there. I got up to Cat 1-2. I was racing for a little Conti team based out of Quebec here. I did some fun races. I did some bigger races. I was never very good, though. I couldn't climb very well, so it was too big. And then I decided, because, I was naturally gifted for sprinting, that it only makes sense that I'd go back to long course triathlon.
Right. Now, so the races that you've done, you've had really good times at, and from what I see with your results based on other races that you've done, this is a real outlier on your performance altogether.
Pucon? Yeah, I mean, I would not say you're being very generous, I think, by saying that I've had some good times in my other races. There are good times, I guess, like in a general, if you look at the entire population of triathletes who compete, but they were very poor times if you consider them amongst the rest of the pro field. But this race definitely was an outlier for sure. And it was an outlier because I am both fitter in the swim. I'm significantly faster in the swim than I was even at my last race at Barrelman in September. I'm significantly stronger on the bike, a little bit stronger on the bike, and significantly better as a runner. And so, that race should have gone differently, and it didn't. And that's it.
Man. Well, to talk a little bit more about your training going into this race, what was your longest swim, bike, and run?
My longest swim was probably 3,400 meters in a single session. So this is an approach. I probably do not as much volume and not as much in a single session. I don't know if you've chatted with other pros about this, but I probably do less in the swim than most of the other ones do. And you'd think that I would do more because it's my weakest discipline, but my coach and I sort of took the approach that because I'm so new to swimming in general, it was better for me to really focus on form than it was to try to develop this huge endurance fitness.
With bad habits.
Right, exactly. Volume with bad habits. So we kept my swims, like I was only doing 50 meters on 100 meters, mostly sets in the pool, because it was all at the start, it was all I could hold good form for was 100 meters. If I could hold perfect form for 100 meters, and then everything would fall apart. So we've been trying to get me to do a lot of form work and focus on technique. I haven't done a ton of hard work in the pool. Like I haven't done tons of sprints and stuff. I haven't done tons of like 400s at hard pace. Just because it always falls apart. So we're just trying to develop that, like the ability to hold good form for a long time by ingraining in that sort of, or building those neural pathways so that it's, like when I'm swimming right now, even in a race, I'm like, okay, hand entry, hand in first, pull around. Okay, do this, then do this, and then do this. And that's what I'm doing while I'm swimming, is just thinking about that, which probably speaks to how weak I am as a swimmer. So we have to get to a point where I don't have to think about it anymore. My body just knows what to do. And so it's just a matter of doing lots of that kind of work. Yeah.
Wow.
It's getting there.
what about the bike and the run? What was your longest bikes and runs?
Oh, my longest bike was 5 hours on the trainer, I think.
Wow.
I did a bunch of, for a couple of weeks, for about a month, I was doing a 4 or 5 hour ride on a Wednesday and then a 3 or 4 hour ride on a Saturday. And I did that for a number of weeks just to build up a huge base.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what about your run?
Longest run was 24K, I think.
Okay. So just over the distance.
Yeah.
Okay. So are you doing a lot of bricks in training? What does that look like?
No, not a lot of bricks.
Really?
I did a few, not a ton though. Not a ton of bricks. There's not really a great way to do bricks in the wintertime in Canada because like when it's minus 30 outside and you're on the trainer and you're all sweaty, you know, try to put on clothes and then you go outside and you freeze and it's not fun.
Well, you don't want to be like Cody Bills and just run a marathon on a treadmill?
No.
I
can't do the treadmill for more than like 45 minutes.
Really?
I can't. I don't like it. It doesn't feel right. You know, I gotta be outside. The trainer I'm kind of growing to like a little bit, from bike racing because I love just sitting at wattage targets. That really appeals to me. I'm a metrics junkie.
So you're using like a smart trainer then?
Yeah, but and I'm using Zwift and so when it comes to like doing indoor stuff, I mean, sometimes you have to do the indoor stuff, but you know, part of the reason I do sport is because I want to get out and explore. You know, that's what attracted me to the bike was my ability to get pretty far relatively quickly and see a lot of things and just be out on the road. So I try to make sure that even though I'm trying to, you know, be a professional, I'm still really loving what I'm doing, and I don't love the treadmill.
Well, that's good, and I'm actually glad that you're actually keeping what you love about the sport in what you're doing, because if you lose that passion, that leads to burnout, which could lead to you just leaving the sport altogether. So that's good.
Yeah, definitely.
So what sessions did you do in training that gave you the confidence to go into Pucon prepared?
You know, I think I did I don't remember what it was. A Zwift Tour of New York or something, their new course that they released. And there was one stage where I rode, was it that or was it Zwift Grand Fondo? I don't know. It was some silly Zwift event or something, right? And I ended up putting out like more power than I've ever put out over a 2-hour period. And during that trainer ride, and I kind of blew myself away. And I was like, I didn't even realize that I'd be capable of this kind of effort. So that gave me confidence. The amount of running that we did and the work that I've been doing on my run, like I was feeling pretty good on the run. And there was one session I went out and ran 24K or 21K on Christmas Day. And it was really cold and I was feeling kind of gross because of Christmas, you know, like whatever. And so I went out and I didn't have the fastest run. I think my average time was like 4:30 per kilometer, which is still pretty quick, I guess. But I felt great. And I got home and I was like, yeah, I feel amazing right now. Like I feel like I could, you know, take over the world with how I feel after this run. So, yeah.
Man. So if we think of your training going into this race, what was the most hours you trained in 1 week?
I think I was up to 16 or 17 for a couple of weeks.
Wow.
That was the most amount of hours, yeah.
So as you're increasing the volume, how are you and your coach, Ian, mitigating the risk of you getting injured?
How are we mitigating the risk? I don't know. I don't know that we were that so much. Ian has this sort of philosophy where he's a little hard on me, I think, and he kind of expects a lot out of me. So he kind of looks at it and says, well, you know what? You were a bike racer for years. You know, that kind of training that you did there was crazy. And so I'm not going to police you. Like he just puts workouts on. There's no scheduled rest days in my training plan at all. Every day is a workout and every day is a hard workout. And he just tells me, you know what? Just train as long as you can. And when your body tells you need a rest day, take that day off. And if you wake up the next day and your body's still saying, you know, no, I think we should have another rest day, then take the second day off. But just get back at it as soon as you feel like you can. So that's basically what I've been doing. And I think I went 18 straight days in December without having a day off.
Wow.
Or like even like a recovery ride or something like that. And I felt really good. And I really like that kind of training because I find, you know, when I'm looking at my, what you might call it there, like my TSB, my chronic training load and all that, I start to feel really good when I'm at like minus 30 on that thing. So I like being deep in the red. I think I did so much volume on the bike as a bike racer that I'm used to that heavy load. Yeah, so no, I don't think we did anything to mitigate risk other than just, you know, come at it like take a time off when you need time off.
It sounds like you're just going at it like a train. Just
yeah,
going.
Yeah, I guess that's probably what it's like. Yeah,
man. So, did you do strength training, like gym work?
Yeah, I did. That was something that I've done that I did in the past as a bike racer and then gave it up. And then I decided to go back into it because I did identify weaknesses in my run.
Really? How did you identify those?
Well, like most triathletes, I just wasn't engaging my glutes and hamstrings enough through my run. So I did a lot of work to run more like a runner. So getting high knees, getting a high kickback, a long stride out the back, landing midfoot under, like, you know, as much as underneath my center of gravity as possible, and a higher turnover rate. So I think I'm almost at 200 steps per minute right now with my turnover rate. So it felt really good to do that, to gain that flexibility, add a little bit of strength in the muscle groups that were missing it, and then to completely overhaul my run form so that I was running more efficiently and I had a better economy of motion. And that unlocked fitness. Even like I took a couple of weeks. It took about 4 weeks to change the form. And once I started getting a hang of it, even just without improved fitness, I was running faster. So it was awesome. Yeah.
Basically, you became more efficient and your energy went further and faster.
Right. Less energy spent moving upward and more energy spent moving forward, I guess was what we were looking for. And, it's kind of funny because I last year when I first started training for this, Ian refused to let me ride my bike for an entire month. And he was like, you're so focused on your bike. You're so worried about you're going to lose your bike fitness that you're not considering enough your run and swim fitness. So he took the bike away from me and just made me run tons. And
you were okay with this?
I wasn't. I was very resentful of this. I think there was one day where I got on the bike and I was like, listen, Ian, I just needed a little recovery ride. And it was like 20 minutes of easy spinning just to get my fix. And so he didn't let me run. So I had this shirt that I bought when I was on a trip in Greece, and it says running sucks on it. And then it's got this little stick man. He's fallen down while he's been running. And so after I started doing all of this runs and I started to like running, and I started to really appreciate my runs because I'm addicted to improvement. So anytime I start something new, you're going to improve quickly, right? And you're going to have a pretty fast learning curve most of the time. So seeing those improvements in my run, it just fueled me to want to run more, to see those improvements. So I actually took a Sharpie and I scratched out sucks and I wrote is okay. So now the shirt says running is okay.
Wow. So with all this training going into any of these races, were there days where you just mentally said, you know, I don't want to train today. I'm over it. I don't want to do this anymore, and I'll just go to sleep?
I don't know that I have that feeling ever. I started cycling right around the time that I kind of got my first real bout of depression, and so cycling was a way that kind of got me through some of that. So anytime I do sport, and now I just suffer from depression frequently on and off. And so when I get into a bad spot like that, it's not really ever the sport that I lose motivation for. It's everything else, you know, it's because it's the only thing that keeps me kind of going every day is to get up and do my training. So yeah, no, I don't often get to that point where I say, oh, I'm so tired of this, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't even know what I would do if I couldn't do it anymore, to be honest.
It seems like you're okay with talking about depression.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. I think it's important to normalize it, so I'm happy to talk about it as much as anyone wants to.
Wow. So when did you actually realize that you're going through depression, and how did that go?
It's funny, like if you, up until probably my 27th birthday, if you had asked me what it feels like to be depressed, I would not be able to tell you. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have any base or whatever, like anything relevant to compare it to. And then, I don't know, it was my second year of grad school. And I realized that I wasn't going to be able to do what I wanted. And I've heard that, there's a lot of shitty things going on, there's a lot of bad things going on at that time in my life, I guess. And it just kind of hit me. And I've also read that your late 20s is when your brain goes through this final phase of rewiring that it does at certain points in your life. And I've heard that oftentimes if you're susceptible to mental illness, that could be the time it presents itself. So that's also possibly a factor. My late 20s, I guess. Yeah, I think, did that answer your question? I kind of rambled a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's fine. But so you were going to say what it was like?
What it was like when I first kind of hit it. I don't know. I just got really moody. I got grumpy all the time. I didn't really want to do anything. I couldn't make decisions. That's still a kind of an issue that I have. I just couldn't make decisions about things. I didn't want to make decisions about anything. It just felt pretty terrible, but it probably took a good year before I even realized how much of an ogre I'd become. Yeah, it was really tough to deal with.
Wow.
Puts a strain on your everything. Like I was in school and then I was out of school and I was trying to find a job and I was depressed and I didn't really care. And, like my wife is she's getting a little bit frustrated with me. And so it puts a strain on your relationship. It's tough. It's tough, man, dealing with depression.
Man, so does having less than ideal performances at races have any impact on the depression?
Like if I have a bad race, does it kind of trigger it? I mean, I guess it does for a couple of days, but it doesn't actually trigger my depression so much. It used to when I was bike racing, and that's part of the reason why I had to quit that sport. But no, I wouldn't say that it does. I mean, I could almost guarantee you that if I did do really well in a race, that probably a week later I'd feel depressed because anytime I get a severe high, I always end up with a really bad low. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Like, I haven't really had anybody on the show so far talk about the big depression issue of the highs and the lows of the emotions like this yet. This is so fascinating to me.
Yeah, so one example I can give you is I won a bike race. It was the first time I'd ever won a race, and it was a huge race for me because it was a really awesome race. And I won the bike race, and I just remember feeling really I was like, whatever, I won a bike race. Like it's just really you're excited, and if you look at pictures of me, you'll see me smiling in photos and stuff. But just on the inside, I was just like, I don't know, man, it feels pretty empty.
Do you feel like it's like this imposter syndrome?
Oh yeah, imposter syndrome is something that I have hard for sure. I felt that way in grad school. I feel that way as a pro. It's a hard thing to kick.
Wow. I've talked with many pros on the show, and most of the time we talk offline, and some of them still feel that way even after they've been in the sport for years as a pro.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
So if we kind of look at your life in general, how do you balance life, work, and training?
Okay, that's pretty easy for me. I work from home 100% of the time. Yeah, I work from home. I work as a coach, and I also work as a social media and digital comms consultant. So I do social media for Cycling Canada. I do social media for a company called Somersault Events. It's our local triathlon series, and I do social media for the local bike shop. And I just picked up another client who's a financial advisor. So that'll be interesting. But, so that's predominantly what I do. And then I coach I have about 15 to 20 athletes that I coach on a regular basis.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we just launched a triathlon club too, so that's been taking up a lot of my time. So I don't actually have to balance that much. I'm trying to practice though. I'm trying to practice being very scheduled. Like I don't have flexible time because my wife and I are probably going to start looking at having a kid soon. So I know that when that happens, like there's going to be certain inflexibilities with my schedule trying to have a child. So I'm trying to practice that right now.
Oh, that's good. So what does your wife do, and what does she think about you being a pro triathlete?
She's an aerospace engineer.
Oh my gosh. Like,
yes.
You say that, and I automatically think of the movie 7 Pounds, where Will Smith is up there in front of all these people designing airplanes and stuff. Is that what she does?
I guess. Yeah, I think she's more in like management side now, but yeah, she's done some pretty cool things. It's like she got to work on the first ever human powered flapping wing aircraft, which was kind of cool. Yeah, she went to U of T, so they have that like Mars simulation thing up there. So she's seen some pretty cool stuff and done some pretty cool stuff. So yeah, she's okay with me being a pro triathlete. It's kind of, she's glad I'm not bike racing anymore. But it's pretty cool because she does triathlons too. So we bought an RV so that we could drive around to races together with our dogs and, race.
Have fun.
Have fun.
Man, so going down to Chile, it was basically a work trip with your wife, and you just tagged along and did a race, basically. Yeah. How was the logistics going into this race? I mean, the closest airport, where did y'all fly from to? What was the logistics? Walk me through all this.
So it's about an hour and a half or so flight from here to Toronto, and there's a layover, and then there's a 10-hour flight to Chile, and you fly into Santiago. And if you're going straight to Pucon, like if you were an athlete who was just flying in for the race and flying out, you'd fly from Santiago to Pucon, which is the airport's about an hour away from the actual town. But we had to go to another place in Chile because we arrived a week early and my wife had to work that week. And so we had to drive from Santiago to Conception, which is 5 hours. And then on the Thursday, we had to drive from Conception to Pucon, which is another 4 hours. So that was tricky because we had to pack the bikes into the car and we had to leave our bike bags in the hotel because there wasn't enough room. And then when we got to Pucon,
there wasn't enough room where?
Like there wasn't enough room in the car for our bike bags and bikes because the bike bags are so big, like that you fly with or whatever. So we had to leave them at the hotel that we stayed at first.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was this like from a rental car? It sounds like y'all had to get a rental car.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we had a rental car. So Jess had one through her work. So
okay.
Did y'all have to the work rental car?
Get like a visa for Chile? Did y'all have to get a certain driver's license? What was this like?
I couldn't drive because the car was her company rental. So I couldn't drive it. I can't remember if she had to get a special license or not. I know we did when we went to Greece a couple years ago. Oh, you don't? Yeah, she's confirmed that you don't need it.
Okay. Did you need to get like a visa for Chile?
Yeah, they have this thing that you get. It basically looks like a receipt. It is a receipt for all intents and purposes. And you have to keep it in your passport at all times. And if you lose it, you have to immediately go to the police station and get a new one. And if you don't get a new one and you show up to customs and they say, "Where's your PDI slip?" You don't have it and you didn't bother to replace it, then I don't know. They make a big deal about it, but we're not really sure how much it matters. But we made sure not to lose our PDIs.
Yeah. So you get down a week beforehand. How is the food down there? Do you have to worry about the water quality? What is this like?
No, not at all. I mean, Chile's a fairly, there's like shanties and stuff like that, but Chile is a pretty advanced country. The food is okay. You drinking water everywhere is fine. Like the tap water it's drinkable everywhere you go. As far as the food goes, it's really good. They got decent food. It was mostly a lot of like, what do we get? It's a lot of just meat and potatoes, honestly. Like they call them smashed potatoes. They're just mashed potatoes, but they call them smashed potatoes, which is something I think we should all adopt because smashed is way cooler. But yeah, so it's a lot of just like meat and potatoes, which I'm fine with. I love that. They had like empanadas. They had all kinds of things that I can't pronounce. Ceviche, stuff like that.
Wow. So whenever you think about the logistics that normal people might not know about, what would this be?
Logistics that, like, you mean in terms of like logistics for being a pro versus like an age grouper, or just
that,
like,
or like just traveling? I mean, you obviously had to get a bike bag with you and your wife racing, and then the rental car. Was there anything extra that we didn't really touch on?
Not really.
Provider?
I didn't have my phone while I was down there because I didn't have a cell phone plan, but my wife had her work phone, so we were able to use that most of the time. But there's cell phone reception everywhere you go, mostly. I would say that there was not a ton of weird logistical stuff. We had a friend in Chile who happens to be a tour guide for Chile, and so she set up all of our accommodations and that sort of thing. Probably the only thing that we in particular had to deal with that most people didn't was parking, because we didn't stay in Pucon, where basically everybody else stays right in Pucon and can just walk to the race start.
Okay. So with driving in Chile, did your wife experience like different driving laws? I know she's probably been there before, but is it different than Canada?
Not really, to be honest. I think it's all pretty much the same. The speed limits are a little bit higher. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. Yeah.
Okay. So to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about the race week, the check-in process here, what was the check-in process like in the village the day before the race?
Yeah, so this check-in thing was a little bit different than I'm used to. Normally, as a pro, you get to skip the lines and you just walk into this special pro registration thing and you just pick up your stuff. I was still able to skip the line, but you just go to the same regular place where the age groupers go and they give it to you. It was kind of set up like a bank tellers. They're tellers, so there's like 6 people in these little booths, and you just told them your number, and then they'd walk back and grab a bag and everything and give it to you. But yeah, it was pretty cool. The thing that I noticed is that Ironman gear, like stuff for sale in the expo, is almost non-existent at Pucon.
Really?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of Pucon souvenirs, because I was actually really disappointed, because I invented this tradition last year that I would always race in the hat of the race. You know, like the trucker caps that they make for each race, and Pucon didn't have one, and I was really upset. So I had to find one in Pucon to race in to keep the tradition alive.
Wow. So what about the vendors at the expo? Did they have a lot of vendors?
Yeah, they had a few. There was like Trek, I think, is pretty big down there. And so there's a Trek one. There was Skechers was there. There was a couple of wetsuit brands that were there. I don't remember what they were called. There was a swim goggle place. I can't remember what they were called though. Yeah, there's quite a few.
Okay. So the day before the race, you got your bike all ready. Do you have to check your bike the day before the race, or do you check it the morning of?
I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to answer. I don't actually know. So most times in races, pros can bring their bikes in the morning of the race. Yeah, they don't like. I don't think they like us talking about that much, though.
Okay. So you get your bike all checked in the day before the race. We'll go with that, and you get everything ready to race the next day. What does your checklist look like the day before the race? And do you want to have certain meals? You want to lay out your gear a certain way? I know your wife's also racing, so it's kind of like double the stress a little bit, because you have to worry about her a little bit. Maybe not. I mean,
so there was 4 of us in the little cabana that we stayed in, and 3 of us were racing. So it was pretty hectic in the couple of days up to the race, because it was me, it was my wife, and then her coworker, and this was his first half iron distance event. So it was a little hectic, and But for me, on the day before the race, I like to get the pro briefing out of the way. I like to usually get a swim in or a run. And then I try to eat, eat solid food. My last solid food meal is at least 12 hours before race start. And then from there on, I go liquid all the way through to the end of the race. So I don't really have a checklist. I just get my bags ready, and I don't have a ton. I don't race with very much. So I try to keep it as simple as possible because I'm very forgetful. So I know that if I had a lot of things in my bag to take with me, that I would forget something. Yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much it. And I just try to relax. I don't really do or think too much at all about anything on the day before a race.
Okay.
So I do have a tradition though. So this is my tradition. And anytime I go into a different place for a race, is I look for a place that has really good coffee, a place that can pour a really good Americano shot or an espresso shot and make an Americano. And then I do that the morning of the day before the race. So that's how I start my day, just by chilling in.
Is that just to get things moving, or is that?
Yeah, it's just kind of to try to zen me out in the morning. You know, like to get up, go find a coffee shop, just kind of forget that I'm doing a race the next morning, you know, and just kind of enjoy the local kind of culture, coffee culture or whatever. I just hang out. Sometimes I'll sit there for like 3 or 4 hours, and just hang out in the morning and have my breakfast there. And then, so that's one of my traditions. I didn't get to do that at Pucon though, because there wasn't really anything there. Unfortunately, maybe that's my race was so bad. I didn't follow my tradition.
Traditions.
Yeah. And then my other tradition, I guess we're going to go down there, is on Sunday. I always look for a good burger place. So those are my race traditions. But we're not talking about that.
Yeah. So the day before the race, what time are you trying to get in bed, man?
I try to be in bed at around 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. And what time are you waking up?
I'm trying to wake up at around 4:30.
4:30. What time was the race start for y'all?
7:40.
7:40. So you're waking up right about 3 hours, 10 minutes beforehand.
I think if I remember right, I set my alarm to go off 4 hours before race start, and I got up and I had a bottle already prepared. It always sounds funny when I talk about, but I had a bottle prepared and I drank that, and then I kind of went back to bed for another 20 minutes or so.
Okay, just to kind of digest a little bit while you're not moving, still kind of relaxing. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I just find it's good to start your glycogen uptake as soon as possible in the morning.
So did you sleep good?
I did. I actually slept really good. I slept really good.
Nice. So on race day, after you get up for good, what was your mindset for this race?
I was actually a lot nervous, more nervous than I thought. And it was evident. I didn't think that I was going to be that stressed out. Like I said before, this wasn't supposed to be a meaningful race. It was supposed to be fun. It was supposed to be like a vacation race. But I was really stressed out. I was super stressed out. And that is evidenced by the fact that I forgot my bottles in the fridge at our cabana. And I put my T1 bag in my T2 spot and my T2 bag in my T1 spot. And thankfully, my wife happened to walk by and see my little laundry basket, and she was like, "Oh, that's got to be changed." So she asked one of the people in transition zone if they could swap the bags. So I was lucky. I was very fortunate that she did that. And then the person that we were staying with had to drive back to our cabana and get my bottles. And that's actually a funny story, because when she got back, I'd already started the race, and she had to beg the guy in the transition zone to take the bottles, but she wanted to put the bottles in a bag, and the only bag she could find was the Ziploc bag where I keep my carbs in, my carb powder. So it's like this white powder. So she shows up to transition zone with these 2 bottles in a Ziploc bag that's covered in white powder. And he takes the bag and he looks at her and he goes, "You know, there's going to be a doping test after this, right?" And she's like, no. She's like, no, it's just his drink powder. It's just his drink powder. So they went and dropped the bags off
While you're
my
swimming.
bike while I was swimming, and they dropped the bags off at my bike, and then I was able to get my bottles after I got out of the water.
Man.
So yeah, I was pretty stressed out that morning. It was pretty stressful. One thing that I thought was really cool, I was there. Andy Potts raced that, and I think he saw that I was stressed out, and I was talking to one of the transition zone employees or whatever, the volunteers, and I guess she didn't really speak English that well. And so Andy actually witnessed the exchange, and he walked over and he's like, "Hey, man, is there anything I can help you with?" And anyway, I thought that was pretty cool that Andy Potts did that, because usually on race morning, you're so into your own race and so into yourself, making sure everything's perfect, that you kind of forget that there are other people around you. So I thought it was pretty classy of Andy, I think, to do that.
I mean, I think it just speaks to his character too.
Yeah, very much so.
So, are you listening to music before the race starts, in between the time you leave transition to head down to the swim start?
I am. I always have my noise canceling headphones on while I'm in transition, and then I have music playing in there. I have a playlist that I put on. That's got a mix of everything, but I always try to have the last song before I go down to the beach be Just Like You Imagined by 9 Inch Nails.
Nice. So you're more into the get your blood pressure beforehand.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I actually find music that pumps you up like that to be somewhat calming, I guess, because it kind of gets me in the frame of mindset, takes away the stress and makes it more excitement, which feels a lot better than stress.
All right. So this swim course, for those that are listening to this that don't know, this swim course is really unique, because I think this race course, Dubai, and I think that's all I can really think of besides like two loop courses like Lake Placid. You actually have to get out of the swim and get back into it. And this is like it's like an M, but the bottom of the M touches land. You have to get out, go back in. And it was a pretty chilly swim day, and it was like 59 to 65 whenever you're starting, at least in Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is whenever you convert it to Celsius. But it was a chilly day for the swim. How did the swim start for you? What was this like on the beach with everybody before you got into the water?
So this was where things went wrong and things went bad. Last year at Eagleman, so Chattanooga was my first pro race, and it was a water start. At Eagleman, though, was my first run swim, and it was a really long run. Like, I think guys were still dolphin diving after like almost 100 meters because it was so shallow. And that race, I was like, oh my God, I've never experienced this, like going full anaerobic in the first, couple 100 meters of a race, and the splashing and trying to stick to someone's hip, and like it was awful. And it blew my race at Eagleman. And so I prepared for that for Pucon. I prepared for that mentally for Pucon. And I was prepared to go hard like that and then settle into a rhythm. And I'd done so much work on my swim. I went to Triathlon Ontario swim camp. I begged them to let me in, even though I was too old. It was for the elite team. And they let me in, and I improved so much. And the race started, and I went into the water. I got in, dolphin dive. I was swimming, and I was on a hip, and I was like, okay, I'm good. This is going to be awesome. Yeah, I don't know how far you want me to go into the actual race, but and then we got out to almost near the first turn, and the chop was so bad. It was so bad, and I was not at all prepared for that. It'd been 4 months since my last open water swim. And I'd never really swim in waters like that. Like, I'm an inlander, so that we have lakes, so they don't get like that, or at least lakes normally don't. And so it was super choppy, and I swallowed some water, and I was coughing, and I was choking a little bit.
This is salt water?
No, this is fresh water. It's a lake. Oh yeah, this is why it kind of blew me away, because I was like, oh, it's a lake. How choppy can it get? But it's also right next to a volcano, which the wind rolls off the volcano, and it just churns up the water. So it was pretty choppy, and I wasn't prepared for it, and it kind of sapped my confidence. It totally sucked everything out of me. And I stopped swimming for a second, and I was breathing, and I could see the second pack just ahead of me. So I started swimming again, and I was like, I got to push through it. And as I was sighting, I could see that I was starting to catch them. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get back in it. And then again, I got hit with a couple of waves and a couple of mistimed breaths. And I sucked in more water. I was choking again. And then I was like, oh, like this is not working for me today. And I just kept trying to do that for the first part of the M. When I got out of the water, and I was I felt so embarrassed because there's all these people there and they're looking at you, and they know, right? They can see my number or whatever. And they're like, this guy's a pro. Like, it's been 45 minutes or like whatever, 20 minutes or whatever, the middle point. And,
so
and I was like,
what emotions are you feeling at that point in time?
It's hard. Like it's really hard to have to face that, because it's embarrassing, and you just have those like thoughts, like you just know that they're out there looking at you thinking, this guy's a pro, really? Like, like those are the kinds of things that you start to think when you're there, and it kind of deflates you a little bit, and it kind of, it's hard to swallow. So when I went out for that second little loop, the second part of the M, I was completely demoralized. I was just like, oh, I got to go back out into that chop and come back. And yeah, it wasn't good.
Man. So you got done with the swim in just over 45 minutes. And
yeah,
that had to be hard for you to look down and see your watch, if you're wearing a watch, or the clock, and going, all right, I'm pretty much behind the second pack by at least 5-10 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And now then, I'm basically going to race this race all alone.
Mm-hmm.
How was this for you?
Yeah, it's hard, and that's largely what it has been for me since I started this. Has been predominantly being alone, and it's hard because you have no carrot to chase when you can't see anybody in front of you, and you have nobody that you could potentially pass. Like as soon as you pass someone in a race, you're like, okay, I have someone behind me who's now after me. So it kind of puts a little bit more zip in your step. But when you're out there alone, it's tough. On the bike, I don't mind it. I feel good on the bike with that. But so when I got out of the water and I'm in transition zone and I'm thinking about the bike, normally that's where I'm thinking, okay, I'm good at this. This is what you like doing. This is your favorite part of the whole race. But again, Pucon had other things in store for me.
So walk me through the actual T1. From the time you get out of the water to the time you leave T1, what's the atmosphere like? What do you see? What do you have to go through? What's the layout like?
The layout's pretty cool. So it's like you run around a square. That way, no matter where you are in transition, you always have the same distance to run. So it's really hard when you run up to the pro rack and your bike is the only one there. That is, it's not great. It's not great to see that.
Man. So you get up there, you get your bike and head out. What is the road quality like at first? Is there like a short hill right there out of transition? Was there a downhill? No. What is this like?
No, so you kind of ride through town a little bit, and they've got it all blocked off. They tell you it's going to be like a mini Tour de France, but there's actually no spectators out there at that point. And you ride through town, and then once you get out of town, the road is a lot nicer. Still chip seal, but it's actually quite smooth. And then it's an uphill, like a false flat uphill into a headwind for about 15 kilometers.
Okay. So after that, I know there's like an out and back course pretty much.
Yeah.
So how was the first out?
Okay, so the first 15K were super tough, riding directly into a really strong headwind. So I was riding like 30 kilometers an hour, and my power meter wasn't working, but my heart rate was like 165, which is what I do my VO2 max intervals at. So I was riding like harder than I've ridden in a long time. And I wasn't moving. And coming from bike racing, I have a pretty aggressive aero tuck. So like I was having a lot of issues with the headwind. And then you kind of make a turn, and then it comes at you as a crosswind, and you get a little bit more speed. So then I was kind of demoralized at that point. I was feeling pretty beat up, and I wasn't riding super hard. So I was moving maybe 32, 33 kilometers an hour in the crosswind. And then I don't know, I kind of like you get things behind you, and you start to feel a little bit better, and you get a little bit of a rest, and you start to feel better. So then I started kind of jamming along pretty good. And I think for the second at the turnaround, I was in like a total flow state for a good like 45 minutes. And I was just grooving. And I think if you look at my pacing on the second part, I was quite a bit faster. I mean, I was riding into a tailwind, granted, but I was working pretty hard for it.
Nice. So when did you actually start seeing the other pros come back to you on the out and back?
I was 5K out from the out and back. So they were about 10 kilometers in front of me.
Wow. Now, did you have any age group athletes pass you?
Yeah, there was a couple. There was a couple of the female pros passed me. No, actually, I passed a bunch of them. I passed a bunch of age groupers that had gotten out of the water ahead of me. And then there was a couple of strong age groupers that went past me. Yeah. Okay.
So did this impact how your confidence was during the race?
No, not really. Because I know that, it doesn't really bother me when I see an age grouper passing me. Like, I'm not that high on my horse, I guess. Like, and like age groupers are still ridiculously strong. There's a lot of them that probably could be pros. So yeah, that doesn't bother me. It doesn't demoralize me at all.
Okay. So whenever you get to the out and back portion and you start coming back to transition to, what are you feeling like for the back half? I know you said you got in this flow state a little bit. What was this like for you?
Oh man, I feel really good when I'm like that. So the part of it was you got a shadow that comes off the bike kind of in front of you. So you can see yourself pedaling. And when I get into a really good rhythm, I kind of get this like sway a little bit in my hips. And I think it's really cool. Like, you watch time trialers and bike races and they get that sway in their hips when they're time trialing. And I think this sounds really silly, but I think it looks super cool. And so when I see the shadow and I'm like, man, I look like a really cool bike racer right now. So then you kind of just fall into it. And I'm just looking at my shadow and like just jamming along. And it was awesome. I haven't felt that high on the bike, in a long time. So that was a high point of that race. Yeah, that's it.
Wow. How are the aid stations on the course here?
They're good. They were like, I didn't have to slow down much. They're very good at holding the bottles out for us. They had, water and Gatorade at the bike course stations. They were these funky little water bottles, though. It did not fit in your cage. So basically you just took the drink and then tossed the bottle at the aid station.
What size water bottle was it?
I don't know. It was maybe like a 350 milliliter bottle. Like it was really strange.
Small, just a small.
It was really, really small.
Wow. Okay, I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah, I think it's just it was a pretty common bottle that you find in Chile. So I imagine that's just maybe the way all of their bottled water is.
Okay. So have you done any racing in Cozumel where they actually have they have like the actual race bottles? They just fill up with water and give you ice water in the bottle itself and give you the bottle at the aid stations.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you get ice water in the race bottles. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So as far as the bike goes, is there anything you'd tell someone to be aware of that hasn't done this bike course before?
Yeah, you get into first of all, it is uphill. The first 10K, despite what you think, they are uphill. So when you're riding really slow and you're wondering why, it's because you're going uphill. The other thing too is be really mindful of the shadows.
What do you mean?
Because the shadows of the trees, when they go over the course, because it's so bright, you can't see the potholes when they're hidden in the shadows. So you kind of have to keep an eye out for that, because there's a cut there. It's really smooth. It's really nice asphalt, but there are some pretty nasty potholes.
Okay. Did you hit any?
No, I didn't hit any, fortunately.
Well, that's good, because before we hopped on here, you had mentioned something about your bike tires.
Yeah, I had to. So I went out and got 28s because I was like, oh, it's chip seal, so I want to run lower pressure, so I want a little bit more tread on the ground, and I thought they'd feel more comfortable. But 28s, as I learned when I got to Chile, they don't actually fit in my bike frame. It's an older bike, so the frame is really tight. So they didn't fit. So I had to take those tires off, and I had to go buy new ones. And I only found one bike shop in all the places we went in Chile that actually sold road bike tires. And they were the specialized turbo, I think, with the cotton casing, and it's only like 2 millimeters thick. So I was paranoid that I was going to have a blowout while riding.
So now then, here you are riding on chip seal with 85, 90 PSI on a course that has shade with potholes, and now then you're not near the second pack, and you're trying to do your best, and now you're also adding anxiety of, hey, you might pop a tire at any point in time.
Yeah, I guess. I didn't really actually think about it while I was riding, to be honest. Those things I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing out, because I'm, a little bit stoic in that way, where I kind of try to cultivate that sort of sense of, you just can't stress about things that you have no control over. So when I'm actually in the race, I'm not even thinking about stuff like that happening.
Wow. So whenever you start getting ready to get back to T2, you're approaching Ks 85 through 90. You're getting really close to getting back to T2. Are you doing anything to start preparing to start running? Higher cadence, higher power, higher effort, lower effort, anything like that?
I'm pretty bad at this because I often race triathlons like they're time trials, so I have a tendency to just pick up my power throughout the race until I'm coming into transition at like 400 watts. And so I have to be mindful of that when I'm coming towards the end of the course, that when you're 3K out from T2, you're not going to take any more time off. Like, the difference between just riding steady and riding hard is going to be maybe 5 seconds. So it's not worth it. So I have to remind myself of that. And it was really easy on this course because, like I said, the first 15K is uphill into a headwind. So obviously the last 15K is downhill into a tailwind. So I was riding pretty easily, and I was cruising at like 60 kilometers an hour. Wow. So that I did that for like probably 5 minutes on the last couple of kilometers. And so I went into T2 feeling somewhat recovered. Yeah.
Good. So we didn't really talk about this much, but what was the course like? Did you look up and see the scenery any? What was this like? It's chilly.
Yes, it is beautiful. It's probably one of the most beautiful courses I've ever done, I've ever seen. There's a volcano, and it smolders 24 hours a day. So there's always smoke coming out of it. And it's really cool when you're out there racing and you look up and there's like, wow, there's an active volcano. Look at that. It's a thing right there. So it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool course.
Wow. So what was the other scenery that you get to see during the race course?
Forests, fields, the mountains, like all kinds of mountains and hills and stuff. There's farmland, there's cows and stuff like that along it. I think the tip of the course runs into a national park. So it gets really nice in through there. There's little towns. The farmers all come out and stand at the end of the driveways and cheer on the athletes. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty rocking course.
Wow. So you get back to T2, you get done with the bike ride in 2.5 hours. You're in T2 for just over 5 minutes. How was this for you in T2?
Oh, it's pretty terrible. I got into T2 and I was feeling so. I looked at my watch and I was like, oh, this is one of your slowest bike splits, your slowest ever run or swim split. And this run course is super hilly. So it's not, I knew that it wasn't going to be a good day. I even considered DNFing at that point. I thought,
really?
I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get back to transition. And I rationalized it by saying this race wasn't supposed to be anything. It was supposed to be fun, and you're not having fun right now. And, Jess is out on course. So why not just, park it after the bike, go change, and then you get to go and watch her do her race cheer for her while she's out on the run. And then I got to transition 2 and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's like, you got to finish the race. And I came all the way to Chile. I'm going to get at the very least, I'm going to get my cool Pucon medal. Yeah. Even when you're a pro, you're still motivated by participation medals. Yeah. Anyway, what was I saying again?
T2.
Yeah. I wasn't feeling super great when I was in T2. I sat down and I put on my sunscreen and I just like slapped it all over myself. And I kind of sat there for a minute in the chair, just thinking about everything that had happened. And then I was like, well, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go out and run it.
There were chairs?
Yeah, it's like that kind of transition zone they do where they hang your bag on a peg. And then you grab your bag, you go sit down in a chair, you put your stuff on, you take your stuff off.
So this is almost like a fool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
And then the pros had little laundry baskets that we had our stuff in.
Wow. So whenever you get out on the run course, I know this has just over 1,300 feet of gain on the run course. What was the first few K like, and what was the atmosphere like coming out of T2?
So this is where this race gets really bad and really, really awesome at the same time. You run out of T2, and it's just a straight run through town. And then you make a right turn, and you head up into the peninsula. And the peninsula is where all the hills are. So all of the elevation is in this 4-kilometer section in the peninsula. And it's like up 12% grade and then down, and then up a 10% grade and then down, and then up 8% grade and then down. And it just goes on like that. And then you turn around and go back and do it the other way. And then when you come out of the peninsula, you have a 3K run through town, which is like pancake flat. And it's a super easy section, and it's pretty cool because there's so many spectators. So yeah, it's a demoralizing course because if you had a hard ride, the first thing you're going to see is big monster hills. There's no time to recover. There's no time to get your rhythm going, and you just got to jump right into that hill section. It's hard.
Man, so definitely doing hill work is going to pay off here.
Yeah, for sure. Like even like a brick into a hill, that would be a good workout. Like if you did a 2-hour bike ride or an 1.5-hour bike ride, and then just took off and did a couple of hill repeats, like maybe 4 or 5 hill repeats as a brick, that would help for sure.
Okay, so the crowd support here was pretty good, it sounds like. But what language are they speaking?
So they're speaking Spanish. Although my wife heard someone yell "Go Gringa," which was funny. But they're speaking Spanish, but they're only yelling 2 things. They're just yelling "Dale, dale, dale" and "Vamos, vamos, vamos." And as from what I understand, "Dale, dale, dale" is like the polite way of saying "go, go, go," whereas "Vamos, vamos" is just like "go, go, go." So that's what they're yelling at you, and they're amazing. They're the best crowds I've ever seen at any race I've ever been to.
Wow.
They are exceptional. They actually drive. Like, their spectators aren't just, people like it usually is, where it's people there with people who are racing, right? People drove in from Argentina to watch this race.
Really?
And it's like on their national television channel. It's like one of the biggest sporting events outside of soccer that they have in Chile. So it's pretty cool, and they're really into it. And if you're walking up a hill, they'll be screaming "Dale, dale, dale" or "Vamos, vamos, vamos." And if you start running while they're doing that, they will cheer like you just won the race. Like 30 of them all around you will like start cheering you on and like patting you on the back if you start running. So it's really cool. It's very cool.
Wow. So this is a multi-loop course here. I believe it's 3 loops. Is that right?
3 loops. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So on the first loop, how does this go for you? I think it's 7K?
Yeah. So like I said, you run down that flat stretch out of transition. I felt okay. I felt okay, and I was running at a fair clip. I think I was just tapping 4 minutes a kilometer, or just slightly faster. And so I was feeling
just under 7-minute miles for those Americans listening.
Right. And that's pretty around probably 3:58, 4 minutes per kilometer is probably what I'm looking at right now for a half iron run. So I was feeling pretty good about that. And then we hit the hills, and I was running up them, and I was like, the first thing I thought was, you did not go up enough hills in training. And I was already feeling pretty beat up and kind of out of it. So I walked the first hill, and I knew I shouldn't have done that. I should have just kept running, but I walked the first hill, which obviously opens up the door to walk the second, third, and fourth hill. And I was running on the downhills, and I was running on the flats. And like when I got out onto the 3K flat section, I was still running like 4:30 a kilometer, but my motivation was draining from me. And by the third loop, I was not having any of it. I just was kind of ready for it to be done.
Wow. Were you experiencing cramping, GI issues, or fatigue,
No,
blisters?
Just a like general fatigue. Really just general fatigue. Like, I'm pretty sure that it was not so much physical fatigue. It was just like mentally being completely knackered, you know?
Right. I know you read The Brave Athlete. Does that help?
It does. I actually really like that book. That's part of the reason why I started reading it again while we were on our flight to Chile, was because I wanted to kind of reacquaint myself with some of the concepts, because I knew that I was a little bit stressed out about the race. But yeah, it does help a lot for sure. Yeah. That book actually helped a lot with imposter syndrome, and some of the unhealthy eating habits that I had.
Okay. So with the run course here, what was the funniest thing that you saw during the race?
The funniest thing that I saw? Oh, so they have a fund that they use to, because there's stray dogs all over Chile. It's like a cultural thing. So they have a fund that they use to pick up all the stray dogs and put them in a kennel for the weekend, so that they're not on the course when you're running and biking, but they don't get them all. So there was this little dog that had been chased out onto the course, and he was so scared. Like people were freaking him out. So he started following me while I was running, and he ran with me for like the whole 3-kilometer stretch through town, and then sort of took off when he got to the hill section. But it was really funny. I had a little running companion on the first lap.
That's pretty awesome. So you have a dog running with you at like a 7-minute mile pace for a while.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Man. So if we take a kind of different look at the race, what data screens are you looking at?
On my bike, I would normally be looking at power, cadence, and distance. On the run, I just have pace.
Okay. So
I think I have heart rate on my screen as well. Yeah. I monitor my decoupling as I'm racing. I'm kind of nerdy about metrics, stuff like that.
Is that good that you monitor that?
Is it good that I monitor it? Probably not. It's probably more than I need to be thinking about in a race. The amount of calculations that go through my head on any given race is remarkable.
Man. So what was the atmosphere like in town? Was it different than out in the peninsula?
In town, it was the same thing. It was just tons of people lining the course, cheering you on. There's a couple of aid stations out there, and the aid stations are really long, and they're in town. They're these giant tents that go over the whole road, and then
really?
Then they're on either side. And it's pretty cool because at the aid stations, they would chant in unison. So you'd have the first group you'd come to would be Gatorade, and then water, and then Pepsi. So like everyone who was at the Gatorade stand would yell Gatorade, and then the water people would yell Agua, and then the Pepsi people would yell Pepsi, and they would just go in unison like that, like they were doing a vocal wave or something.
That's pretty
cool. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
So the aid stations, they have water, Gatorade, Pepsi. What else do they have?
That's it. That's it. We were told there'd be fruit on the run course, but I never saw any fruit. I only saw Gatorade, water, and Pepsi, which is fine. I don't eat anything when I'm running anyway. So, yeah.
Okay. Now, during the race course.
Okay, so Jess is saying that there was oranges and bananas.
At one station.
Oh, at one station. I remember that station. There was oranges, yeah. Yeah. That was the only one that I saw that had fruit. It was just orange slices.
Okay. So, if we kind of look at your mentality at this point in the race, say mile or K in your terms of 15 through 21, how are you holding up mentally?
Usually by 15K. 15K is where if I'm having a good run, is where I start to feel it creep into my legs. So this particular race, I was already a broken unit by then. So 15K is usually when I'm starting to think, okay, it's only 6 more K to the end, right? And then it's only 5 more K. Once you get to 5K left, it's like, oh, it's just a 5K at this point. So usually 15 to 21 is usually the best part of my race, because that's when I get fired up about finishing. Especially on if it's a last loop.
Yeah. Right. But this time, what was it like?
This time it was kind of like that. I always rally back at the end, always. And so this time I kind of had that a little bit. I tried to run a little bit more through the hill sections. And then I told myself that when I got into town that I was going to push it out as much as I could to get through town and back to the finish line. And I did. And I was pretty happy about that. It was hard. It didn't feel good, but it was hard.
Now, did you see Jess on the run course?
No, I actually didn't see her. No, I did see her. I did see her. She was sick, so she lost her voice and she couldn't say anything, but yeah.
Wow. So whenever you start thinking of the last, say, 800 yards of the run course, it's like this dogleg to the finish line as off of the loops. What was this experience like for you?
I love that last little section. If I could get the excitement and motivation that I get in that last couple 100 meters to the finish line for the whole race, I'd have much better races. I find that just fires me up, and I gun it all the way to the finish line. I love finishing shoots.
Wow. So how was it here?
It was pretty cool. It was right on the beach. So they had mats down, like these hard mats down, so you weren't running on the sand, but they had big bleachers on one side, and then it was the beach on the other side. So it was pretty cool.
Wow. So after you finished the race, what'd you do next?
I walked right into my medal. She was holding it up, and I kind of just walked. As I was walking past her, I just kind of put my head down and put my head through the hole and just kept walking. And because I was so thirsty, so I went and then I just went right into the tent, and I grabbed a couple of drinks, and I grabbed a banana or something like that, and then that was it. I just walked. I don't really like to linger around there, so I just had my thing and I got out of there.
Okay. So you stayed around till just finished?
Yeah. So one of the people we were staying with, who's a friend of ours, she was there also. So her and I went up onto a cabana just above the finish line and waited for our other 2 people to come through.
Nice. So to kind of transition a little bit, how was your recovery process?
It probably wasn't that ideal, I guess, because I didn't really have a cool down strategy. And the next day we went on this a little excursion. So we did a little bit of a hike, which was good to get my legs moving. I actually I didn't really feel like I was that tired. I actually felt pretty good on the Monday. Which is why I think that my performance on Pucon was more psychological than physical, because I don't actually think I was pushing myself that hard. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
I knew I was going to have a week off, so I kind of didn't prioritize recovery like I would if I was July or something.
Gotcha. So what's something that you learned from this race that you'd like to pass on to someone that hasn't done this race before?
I'd say prepare for the swim with the choppy water. Like I said, I'd never experienced any. I grew up in a beach town on a lake, a pretty big lake, and I'd never experienced chop like that on a lake. So there's that. Other than that, like prepare for the hills. You don't realize how steep the hills actually are. So prepare for the hills. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. It's a really good course. It's really well organized. It is both in English and in Spanish, so there's no really issue with translation. Like even the athlete briefings are done in English.
What about travel? So if you travel, you could fly right into Pucon and just get a taxi?
You can, yeah. You get a bus into Pucon. The only thing about that is that you have to use one of their internal airlines, like LATAM, I think is one of them. And it's really expensive to fly with your bike on those airlines.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. So looking back on it, how well prepared... I can't talk. Looking back on it, how well prepared for this race do you feel like you were?
I felt like, in principle, I was very well prepared. It makes me frustrated just to think about it. I was very fit going into that race. Everything I did in training in the weeks leading up, I was just like stuff I'd never done before. And I was like, I'm swimming like 10 seconds per 100 faster. I'm feeling super good on the bike. I'm running like 10 seconds per kilometer faster than I normally do. I was feeling so good and I felt so prepared. And then as soon as I hit that water, I was like, oh, you're not prepared. Like you've done everything to prepare yourself fitness wise, but you still haven't got through your crazy, the way you feel in the water and the way you handle a race mentally. So, it was kind of, I don't know, it was a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Man. So what do you feel like was your Achilles heel in this race?
The water, for sure. The chop in the water. Just, it started everything off terribly, and from there on, it was just building on it.
Man. So, if you could change one thing about the race and do it all over again, would it be the actual swim?
For sure. It would be being more prepared for that kind of swimming in that type of situation, for sure, to be more prepared for that. If I had got out of the water in 28 minutes, like I know that I can, my race would have been different, I think.
Right. So how could Ironman have made your race experience better?
I don't think they could, to be honest. It was really well organized. I don't have any complaints about that race.
Wow. So for first timers doing this race next year, what's some advice that you would give them?
What's some advice that I would give them? I would say stay a week after the race so that you can do some exploring around Pucon. It's beautiful there. It's not a town that you want to explore when you're focused on a race, where you can't kind of let loose a little bit and stay out late, one night or something like that. So definitely book some time after the race to spend some quality time in Pucon, because it's worth it.
Now, I know if you're coming from North America like you are in Canada, the travel time is different, but also the climate is a lot different. How did you adapt to that so quickly?
So it actually wasn't that hot when we were down there. Santiago can be really hot, and it was hot when we left, but it was only like 21 degrees when we got Celsius when we got down there. And it was pretty much like that the whole time. We never had really any hot days until after the race. Even the race itself was, typical weather. It wasn't hot enough that I needed to be heat adapted or anything like that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So we covered a lot about your race. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Oh, anything else I want to add? No, I just to stress that Chile is a really amazing place for the people and sport. And it's also just, it's totally worth it to go down there. It's a beautiful country. If you have time in Santiago, do the El Plomo climb.
What's that?
It's this massive climb that takes you from 930 meters elevation to 3,000 meters of elevation. And it's 30 something kilometers, and there's I think there's like 40 switchbacks.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's
pretty
cool. I didn't get to do it. We drove up it, but I was so jealous. I saw all these cyclists, like hundreds of them riding up it as we were driving up it. And I was like, oh, I want to ride this right now. But yeah, it looks pretty cool.
So you're going to ride that next year when you go down?
I am thinking about going back down when Jess goes down for her next trip and maybe spending a couple days in Santiago as like a training camp.
You should do it.
I know. Yeah.
Man. So what races are on your bucket list, man?
On my bucket list, I want to race in Europe. I just really want to race in Europe. I don't know why. I just think it'd be really cool to do races in Europe, especially like looking at that one. There's one in Vichy, I think, that looks really cool. There's one in Germany. I think it's a full where you have to swim. Is it the one where you got to swim through the canal?
I don't think it's that one, because Frankfurt Swim is like just like similar to this one where there's 2 dog legs in a lake, but that's not in a canal.
I think this one might actually be maybe it's in Austria. I think it's in Austria. I can't remember what I saw it on one of these Kona videos, and it looked really cool.
You're probably talking about Challenge Roth.
No, it's definitely an Ironman.
Oh, it is.
It's definitely an Ironman race. Yeah, because it was in it was in one of those Kona preview videos where they pick age groupers and kind of follow their progress to Kona, and they were showing one of the people qualified in that race. I can't remember what it was though. It was super cool. It looks super cool. And then the other one I would like to try is Ironman Wales. Really? I've heard that it is an exceptionally tough course, but I've heard that the crowds are really cool. Like they're apparently out they're out singing like drinking songs in the morning when you're coming out of the water. So it sounds pretty cool. Man. And then I would love to do things like Patagon Man, like the ultra endurance Ironman events out and like trail runs and stuff like that, mountain biking. I'd love to do that. The Norseman. I'd like to try to dip my feet into like ultra marathoning or like marathon bike races, like the Ram or something like that. I would love to do stuff like that.
Wow. So what's your dream for the sport?
My dream for the sport. I think I'm too old to have started into the sport to ever get anywhere, high up. What I'd really like is to know that when I stop, when I'm getting to the age where I'm no longer getting better, but maybe starting to get worse, I want to be able to look back and say, you couldn't have done it any better. Like you couldn't have been any better. I want to look back and say, you put the work in, you did as much right as you possibly could. And, you put the work in, and there's no way you could have been any better than that with what you were doing. So that's kind of what I would like to see. I don't care if my best ever is 20th place in a race or if my best ever is first place in a race. It doesn't matter. I just want to know that was the best I could have done.
Wow. I really appreciate how much gratitude you have for this sport. That's really common with a lot of people, and it is not there with a lot of people as well. But I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
So what moment are you looking for in a race?
What moment am I looking for?
Aside from swaying on the bike.
That was probably a really funny story. That was probably made me sound kind of weird.
I've heard some more weird ones. It's okay.
Like the thing I'm looking for in the race is to feel good on the run. I really love that feeling when you get into a good groove on the run and you feel strong. And I want that. And I want to be able to pass someone. I want to pass another pro. I don't know if that makes me sound like, if that's unsportsmanlike to say that, but I just want to pass somebody, have that thrill of being like, okay, I'm doing better than someone else out here today.
All right.
Yeah.
Man. So, Alan, I know you have a podcast that you do. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a podcast I started a couple of years back because I got tired of listening to like talking head podcasts about bike racing, like talking about pros or like a bunch of guys sitting around talking about like their carbon bikes and which one is fastest and lightest. So I decided to start this podcast where I'd interview, I started with local cycling personalities that I know. and from all different aspects of cycling culture. So I had like a bike courier on, I had a track cyclist, I had a roadie, I had a bike commuter on, anyone I could that was related to the cycling sport. I tried to get onto the show to tell their story and have like a casual conversation, kind of like what we're doing right now, like sort of a casual conversation, and do it that way. And I ended up getting some cool people on the show, like Mike Woods was on it. I've had most of Team Canada's track team on there, a couple of Canadian pros. Yeah, it's been pretty cool. It was a pretty cool podcast. Cycling Canada paid me to do it for a while, so it was pretty cool.
Nice. What's the name of it?
It's called Clipped In. Clipped In, a cycling podcast is the full name of it. Okay. It's still on iTunes. There's, I don't know, 20, 25 or 30 episodes, I think, out there.
Nice. So where can people follow you and reach out to you, man?
The best place is probably on Instagram, Alan Dempsey Try. And then on Facebook, I think it's also Alan Dempsey Try there as well. I have a Facebook page and Instagram. I'm pretty terrible at it though. Like I work as a social media consultant, and yet if you look at my personal social media accounts, they're pretty terrible. I guess it's like, the joke about the plumber who has leaky faucets. You're just really bad at doing things for yourself.
Right. Man, well, to wrap everything up, I just want to say thank you so much. And what's your definition of a perfect race?
I had a feeling that you would ask this question. So I had some time. I actually thought about it. I would say, I don't think a perfect race exists. And honestly, I don't think I want it to. The drive to keep going in sport is about pushing yourself to see what you're capable of. And if you reach a point where you have a perfect race, then it means you've reached that pinnacle. And there's no, if it's perfect, how can you improve upon it? So I think that's the day that you'd stop racing. So I don't want that to ever happen. I don't want to ever come out of a race going, okay, here's what you did right. Here's the things we can still work on. That's what I want out of every race. That's a perfect race, I guess, is to have an imperfect race every time.
Wow. Well, Alan, this has been fun. I've enjoyed this, and I love having this in-depth conversation. I'd love to invite you back on next time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Well, you have a good day, and
Cool.
We'll talk soon, okay, man?
All right, take care.
Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you were able to learn something from today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to leave a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to see pictures from this athlete's race, learn more about who I am, what I'm doing, or be on the show yourself to share your story, check out my website at CoachTerryWilson.com. Until next time, continue the pursuit.